Welcome everybody back to Shatter and Rise, the podcast about different journeys and than the traditional beaten path when it comes to your career or your side hustle, whatever that might be. I'm joined by Jarvis today. If you have listened to the first season, you would recognize his name because he was one of my originals, and I'm so excited to hear where you are because it's crazy to me like how far you've come in such a short amount of time. And I'm so happy for you and so excited. So welcome back.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. I enjoyed the first time, and so more than happy to come now and to come back anytime you will have me.
Awesome. I would love that. We always have good conversations. So, and I'm super fascinated. So, last time we spoke, you were kind of in a transition from you were doing mostly graphic design work on your own, and then you were transitioning over. You started working for another company. You were getting into more of the UX side of things and doing the web design stuff, and you were also I don't know if it was on the podcast, but I know last time I talked to you, you were starting to get into mentoring.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about where you're at now.
Yeah, so like you said, a ton has changed. So currently, I am a senior product designer at LinkedIn on their design systems team. Um, I also mentor for Design Lab, and just for anybody who really needs it, as well as like doing some teaching with some different universities, like doing way more than I should do. Um, and then another one of the big things is that I helped co-found a group called Black UX Labs, where our goal is just to help diversify the UX space. So I have a lot of things that are happening at the same time.
So many things. And you also have a growing family, which is huge. I think we talked a lot about that last time too, of what it's like to be a designer and work from home and be taking care of your family, and how to balance all of those things and make sure that you're not doing so much that it takes away from the things that are most important to you. So congrats on that too. Number three coming on the way.
Yeah, still working on the balance. Haven't
Of
haven't quite
course.
fully figured that out, but I definitely try to do the best that I can while still like checking off like the career boxes. Um, it's just embracing the chaos that's usually happening in my house, where
100%.
yeah, we have number three coming, and we have our niece staying with us. So um, yeah, so there's about to be four kids up in here. Our niece is 13.
Oh man.
Um, and so just like embracing that it's not going to be quiet, it's not
Yep.
going to be like serene all the time,
Yep.
and being okay with that.
100%. I'm also coming to that realization with two now that my life will never, ever be quiet ever again. Two boys, well, three if you count my husband, because he's pretty much a man child. and, and you add in the animals, like it's just pure chaos all the time. And if you don't just embrace it, you'll just be miserable. So might as well enjoy the life
Mhm.
and
Exactly.
just be along for the ride and have a good time.
My We get like these little chunks of time, and so we're like really good about bedtime. Where my daughter goes
Mm-hmm.
down at 7, my son usually maybe like an hour after, around 8 or 8:30, and so we get like that little like hour or two at the end of the day,
Yes.
and then I usually get up around like 5 a.m. So I take like a
Woo.
morning chunk of like I just need to start my day with like some peace and quiet.
Yep.
Um, and they'll usually start waking up around like 7 or 8. So it gives me a couple hours to myself too.
That's nice. I mentioned this before, but I am very envious that you have the willpower to do that. And I bet, like, if I tried enough, the enjoyment of having that quiet time to actually just get my stuff done and work probably would eventually get me out of bed in time. But I got to get there, and I got to get past the newborn stage where
Yeah.
I actually sleep again and I don't just take naps through the night. I'm looking forward to that because yeah, that golden hour with your partner when everyone's asleep, you shut the computer, you put your phone away, and you just kind of like be together. Whatever it is that you enjoy doing in that time is so nice. It's like self care, but for your relationship.
Yeah. And it's like 9 times out of 10, like we're not even doing anything.
No.
Sometimes we're not even talking. It's just like, yeah, I just want to be in the same room as you
Yep. Without
and
someone
enjoy
else
your
needing your
presence.
attention.
Exactly.
Yep. 100%. So tell me a little bit about the mentorship. So I kind of was not surprised that you went that route. I just think that you're an amazing person that I, like you just seem like a giver naturally. But have you found that that kind of fed a need that you had? Is that like um does it feel like a career thing that you kind of like just didn't know you needed and then kind of added in and it's like playing that part? How has that been going for you?
Um, it was really me coming to the realization that I had knowledge that was useful because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel like I was like very far in my career at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I still had a lot to learn, and so I was like, I don't feel like I'm where I want to be yet. So how can I help somebody else? Um, and then I don't remember when the light switched, but I talked to somebody, and they were like, "Oh my god, like the information you gave me was um, super helpful. Like it
Yeah.
really helped me
Well,
learn about the
even
industry and
you
look at
taught
it differently."
me, yeah, you taught me like a Figma session, and I think we spent maybe like what, an hour and a half, and I was like, holy crap, I just learned so much. Like, thank you, that was amazing. And I think you're maybe like one of those natural teachers that it's just something that maybe you've developed or you're blessed with, but you just have a way about you that it makes it easy to learn from you. And it's an amazing. I'm so glad you are willing to share that with the world. So I'm so happy for you that you went that route.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I feel like with a lot of the boot camps and um, schools and like education around UX, it gives you like these very like blinded perceptions of what the
Yes,
industry is, and so
for
I'm
sure.
really trying to like break those barriers down for the people who I get the opportunity to mentor, and be like, okay, like yes, they're teaching you this, but also like outside of this coursework that you're doing,
Hmm.
um, look at the bigger picture, think outside of the box that they're putting you in, so that
Yep,
way you're setting yourself up for once you're done, to actually be successful in the workplace.
for sure. Especially, so one of the things I've come across is the whole experience barrier, right? That like all these people are flooding to these boot camps and they do the curriculum and then they get out and the job hunt is only getting worse. It's getting more horrendous and difficult um, as people make this career shift to being more on in the digital career path, and they need the experience to get into whatever field it is because those programs are designed to be like very hmm, like sandbox oriented, right? Of like best
Yeah.
case scenario, these are all the things you could do when you design a website. But the reality is like maybe 10% of that, and everything else is business, and we're moving on. And so, like, but I also see the value in the the people that are going through these boot camps have all the new tech. They
Mhm.
understand new principles. They're really more customer focused than a lot of the old school designers. So they are super valuable, but how do we get them to get in front of the right people and know how to speak to their knowledge and the way that they would work for those companies and show them that they are of value when they are going through the like box, like a cookie cutter,
Mhm.
education. So that's why these mentorship programs that are coming out are so valuable to these digital career paths because it makes such a huge difference for them when they're in the job hunt, or even if they want to go into freelance. Like there's so many pieces that are missing in these educational, not that it's their fault, but it's just not within the constraints of the boot camp. So there has to be like this after part, right?
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I think that a lot of the struggles with like learning the field, going through the boot camps, and like finding success
Mm-hmm.
in the actual world after they get done, kind of stem from how we just do education in general,
Yeah.
here in the U.S. And so it's very much a you sit here, I tell
Mm-hmm.
you what you need to know,
Yeah.
you answer my questions, you do X, Y, Z, and then you go and you're going to be fine. But like working in design, it is not that in the slightest.
No, not
It's
at all.
all about like a lot of what I do is like my manager will come to me and be like, hey, like these are roughly some of the things that we think we want to do this quarter. What do you want to do? I'm like, oh, I kind of like these things. Okay, those are the ones that you want to take. What does that look like? When can you have it done? What are the milestones for the quarter? All of this. And so it's me making my own work.
Mm-hmm.
It's nobody coming and saying, Jarvis, this is what you should do, and this is how you should do it, and this
Which
is when I need it done by.
exactly
None of that happens.
in the creative field, you don't see that. Like that's old school, right? That's
Hmm.
somebody that's in a factory, and that's
Exactly.
not the new career paths, even outside of creative um, endeavors, is way more targeted at people who are like able to think outside the box, who can problem solve, who can iterate, who can prototype, who can talk and speak to the knowledge base, or can actually hold a conversation with a business owner or a customer and extract the proper data, right? Like you can't just sit in your bubble and do a thing that somebody told you. Like that, those jobs aren't going to exist much longer, to be honest.
Yeah, but if we look at education, it's
Right.
still
They're still on
factory
the same,
focused.
exactly. And that's
And
really concerning.
yeah, and so like literally majority of your life up until this point where you have to go into career, that's what you're taught. Like
Yeah.
elementary, middle school, high school is all that like frame of mind. And so the boot camps cater to that a little bit, to
Mm-hmm.
where they're kind of breaking that down some, but not very much.
No.
And so it's culture shock a lot of the time when they like
Yep.
realize, like come to that realization, because I know it was eye-opening for me of like, oh, I know that they said that this is a process that we have to go through, but this doesn't work for everything,
Yep.
and I don't even need to use it for everything.
No.
I have a mentee right now who um, was going through like the research phase of a project
Mm-hmm.
and was unsure of the problem space that he found, and was like, "You're my mentor. Like you're supposed to tell me if I'm on the right track." And my response was, there isn't a right track.
No.
And I don't know if you're going down the right path. I don't know if these are the right problems to solve, because nobody would. Like
Right.
that's why we do what we do. We're making hypotheses, we're making educated guesses
Yep.
that we'll test later, but we actually have to build it first. And so
Yes.
we don't really know if it's going to work. Look at the like Google glasses.
Yeah.
Google spent tons of money on it, thought it was going to work, did like a pilot program, completely flopped, and then they pivoted.
Yep.
And so that's like the key piece that people miss, is that it's okay if it doesn't work. You just have to be flexible and be able to pivot and be
Yes. You
able to
have to
learn from
take the
the
data
exactly.
and apply it and then come up with a new solution. Because yeah, so there's like a huge, it's like the education piece that's missing is if we could just teach people how to run a startup, they would know, they would understand the business implications. They would understand the customer journey. They would understand what do you do when you only have $500 for marketing? What do you do when the customer experiences COVID and now your product isn't as valuable to them. What are you going to do? So like, it's all of, there's so many factors. You can't like have a one pathway that's going to work for every single thing. That's impossible. Think like, that's almost ridiculous when you really think about like the world in general and thinking that you can design like that. And so it's really interesting to me that you're on the same path frame.
Yeah.
You know, like we're also paying attention to education here. It's something that we are trying to help just our community in general in the area that we live in, create some awareness of like, we're not pushing too hard, but saying there are other ways. There's more to the story. Like, yes, you can go to this college and get a degree in maybe like graphic design, right? But did you take any business classes while you were there?
Yep.
How do you expect to make a living? Okay, even if you go work for someone else, do you understand what it is that they need? It's not about how good you are. It's about what problem do you solve? And so like, that's where that shift needs to come in education. Is it's not the right answer. It's how did you get there? And what was your reasoning? And was that good? And like, stop punishing people for the wrong answer and instead have them spend more time processing lots of possibilities, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's super. It's kind of scary to me. And then you probably feel the same way with your children.
Terrifying.
Now, is your first son almost school age?
He's in pre-K right now.
Okay. So you're having to kind of make some decisions pretty soon about like where he might go to kindergarten. That was a terrifying thing for us. It's a big decision.
Yeah. Because we actually homeschooled him for pre-K.
Okay.
And so we're like trying to make the decision of, do we want to continue that into kindergarten? If we do continue that, how do we make sure he still gets like adequate social interaction so he's not like socially awkward later?
Yeah.
Even the fact of like, if we do put him in like traditional school, is this a good school district for him? Do we need to like move to get into a different school district that's gonna like be able to foster his needs better?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to consider, and especially with the like huge disparities in the type of education that you can get from, you know, one school district to the next based off of funds and access to technology and different stuff like that. It's tough. I mean, we're like fortunate to be able to like have the problem to make that decision, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people is like, this is where I live, and so this is just where they have to go. But that doesn't make it any easier.
No, it doesn't. It's just a different kind of problem.
Yeah.
But I think that, and I hope at least, that we'll continue to see this emergence of different types of education continuing to foster. After COVID, we realized that our kids can learn a different way if they need to, and they'll be okay doing that. And some of them actually like bloomed transitioning to online learning. And so at least they have more options that meets them where they're at.
I know for the like online school that Jackson goes to, it's very much like as fast or as slow as he needs it to be.
Exactly.
Which I would have loved as a kid, because that's one reason why college just didn't work for me, is because it was too slow.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to wait for everybody else to understand this concept before we can move on, when I already got it.
It's annoying. It's a waste of your time. Right.
And so if I could have had something like that, like I probably would have got through high school quicker.
Yeah.
Like left early, went on and did other things. And so he's kind of gotten that opportunity to, he's like outpaced his pre-K work already. and he's like
amazing.
doing kindergarten stuff, and it's completely fine. They're like, oh yeah, like
Hmm.
he already understands this. Like, we're not gonna keep teaching him the same thing that he
Right.
already understands. We're
Right.
gonna move him on to something else because we're not waiting on someone else to understand the concept
Exactly.
too.
Yep.
If he's in a classroom with 15 other kids and he gets it, it doesn't matter. Everybody has to get it.
Yep. My son goes to Montessori, and we're very fortunate that our Montessori is actually a charter school. It is not a private school, so we're able to do that without having to pay a tuition.
Mm.
Super fortunate. And they have a similar model where it's all based on where he's at. So he has a lot more skill in math, and so he's at a higher level in math. He's in like a third grade level in math, but he's only in second grade technically, and then like his reading is way more difficult for him, so he's at a second grade level, and they're not going to hold him back. Like, there is some laws that they're trying to instill for reading, but beyond that, they're not going to hold him back. Like, he can just keep progressing however far he wants to. And so that
Um,
that's really encouraging, that at least we're seeing some changes in that way of
and
things.
and the great thing about that is like, oh, he's ahead in math. Well, we can just put more focus on reading and
Exactly.
spend more time on the reading instead of still having equal parts reading and math.
Yep.
So that way he can catch up in the subject that he might be struggling in. And so
Yeah. And
it's
it
like
needs more
that
attention.
flexibility is
Yes.
exactly what we've been talking about. Of like, we can't just think that there's only one path.
No.
You got to be flexible, and we've got to be able to adapt. So
And no one learns one way. Like, that's just
exactly.
impossible. It's so ridiculous that it's still taught that way in the standard school settings.
Mm.
So yeah, it super fascinating, which is totally off track for this podcast, but but just a great conversation to have in general of, when you're looking at your career path, especially if anyone else like you is interested in education, and I feel the same way, where like I always cared about education, but I didn't know how to, like, I knew I didn't want to be a traditional teacher. There are other pathways for you to help those that might be a few steps behind you. You don't have, like you said, you didn't feel confident, but you don't have to know everything. No one's, to be honest, no one's an expert. Unless you've done it for like 20 years, but then at that point, you're probably like so far behind in technology that you actually don't know everything because you've just been
Yep.
doing the same things. So there will always be someone a couple steps behind you on the path that you can reach out to and ask them, what are you struggling with? And maybe you have it, maybe you know someone else that has the answer. It if that's something that drives you and interests you, like, pursue mentoring. There's so many
Mm.
platforms now that um you can even do it on your own technically. I mean, social
Yeah,
media is a total game changer for people who would like to mentor on the side by themselves. But there are also other things like, your situation, or like ADP lists or things like that, where you can
definitely.
join a community.
Yeah, and that was a realization that I came to, was that just because I don't feel like I know everything doesn't mean that I don't have valuable knowledge for somebody who is earlier in their journey than me.
Exactly.
Um, and so I was
100%.
like, all right, like we're gonna take the dive, and it ended up, helping me understand the places where I was lacking, and helping me to push my knowledge in areas that
Yep.
I was kind of putting off, because they're like, these questions keep coming up, and they're looking at me as the person who can answer them, and I can't all the time,
Right.
but I can usually find it, just because once you kind of find your footing and get into the industry, you become resourceful. You know people who know it,
Hmm.
so I can typically figure it out quicker than they can.
Right.
Um, but I didn't know all the things that I didn't know I didn't know.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, it's been really eye opening, even from like my perspective of what's beneficial, what are people struggling with, and how I can like adapt the way that I understand information and regurgitate that information to them.
That's really interesting. Um, and that's a nice, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but it's such a nice bonus that you get to continue like pushing yourself to be so much better just organically through helping other people. Um, it's now I kind of want to do that. I mean, we do help people, but I don't get to do a lot of design stuff, mentoring just because our community is not there yet. In terms of local people, but it's always great to kind of get back into the design world once in a while, and just it's exciting to see how everyone's doing and how things are changing and always growing, but also staying the same. Design is
Mhm.
design. um, and so maybe I'll have to push myself a little bit further to try and figure out like, okay, what are the areas I could be working on to help other people learn and grow as well. So that's a really cool
Yeah,
takeaway.
that's one of the really one of the main points why I wanted to go to LinkedIn so bad, um, because I'm in the design system space now, which is super fascinating and I love it. Um, but I had done it for a couple of companies, and it was always very much in the beginning stage where they either didn't have a system at all or they had a very outdated system or something. And so it was all about like revamping the system, driving adoption, all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I interviewed at LinkedIn, they were on the other side of the fence where they had already made the system. They already had an established system that had been used for years. Like they had adoption. Um, and so now they're just like maintaining and like fostering education for the system. And so that was super fascinating to see how it works from that side of the fence because I had never gotten there yet.
Yeah.
Um, and so there were like a couple of other companies that I was interviewing at that I passed on to be like, I really want to see what this is like so I can have that full picture of this like niche area that I like to work in.
And I remember that's what you seem the most passionate about when I had chatted with you last time and
Mhm.
asked about kind of what are the things you were working on at the company you're with. And that's amazing. Do you feel like well-rounded now, or do you feel like there's still more out there that you can kind of dive into?
I still think that there's a lot more that I can dive into. Um, I think that I am a lot further than a lot of people in the system space right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think there's still a lot of untapped potential there. Um, and so just really trying to push the bounds at LinkedIn and push myself to find those things. And we do a pretty good job of like self-evaluating and really trying to see what we can create that's the best for the designers at LinkedIn because a system is an internal product,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and so my users are designers, and so I'm trying to service them. Um, and so we have a lot of really cool things that we're working on, but it's like night and day what I was doing in systems before. It's like I used to be literally making the components and writing the
Mhm.
documentation, and now I haven't even gotten close to doing either one of those things.
That's crazy. That's and it's so interesting to me that one thing like design systems, it can have so much like scope. Like it's just so vast, right? That you haven't even touched like so many pieces of it yet. Even with working in those like complete opposite realms,
Hmm.
right? Um, and I think that like sometimes it's scary. And when we say like, oh, the design field's getting really saturated, but like your story shows that if you find a piece of the design, because the design process is huge,
Yeah.
it's very, very diverse. If you find a piece that you do enjoy doing and you become specialized in it, then it's not going to be boring. There's still opportunity for you to have, growth and keep pursuing better ways of doing the design work and making it a better product, a more easy product for your designers to use, a better thing for the customers, that it doesn't have to be like the same thing all the time. You don't have to stay stagnant just because you niche down. And I think a lot of people are wary of that, but I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's a great path for someone to take.
Yeah, and I mean the same thing applies for even if you don't specialize with. If you switch industries,
Hmm.
then the problem space is completely different, and so the work
Yeah.
you're going to do is completely different. And the same thing holds true for a design system, and the needs that it's going to service are going to be different based on the industry that you're doing it for. Um, but yeah, I think one of the big reasons why systems was even fascinating to me when we first talked was because typically we see like product design and tech as like being on the cusp of where technology's at.
Hmm.
Like we're constantly trying to push
Yep.
um, what's possible. And with systems, we're even further ahead of that
Right.
a lot of the times. At least we
You're
should be.
right.
um, because if you look at how you can build adoption for new technology at a large scale, at a large company like LinkedIn that has over 300 designers
Hmm.
um, who are all leveraging a design system, if the design system utilizes that tool, then you have instant access to all 300 designers. Same
Yep.
thing on the engineering side. Like if they implement a new piece of technology on the engineering side and they push an update, well, now every engineer within the organization has that new technology to leverage.
It's such a crazy scale, like,
Mhm.
to think of. Man, that you have like a lot of power there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's I- not discouraging, or like, I guess it's it's a really, I don't know. Um,
I'll say it's why I enjoy it because I knew I wanted to at least like work at a large tech company just to at least see what it was
Try
like.
it. Yeah.
But my fear was that I would be stuck on a little tiny feature, and that's
Yes.
the only thing that I would
Exactly.
ever be able to do is work in this
Exactly.
little tiny space. And so design systems was a way that I could do like go to this larger company but still have like
Large
org
scale
wide
reach.
impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, oh, that's so amazing. I'm so happy for you. It's huge. And titles don't say much, to be honest, but that's so crazy for your career to be able to, and whether you stick with them because you really enjoy it, or if you move on to something else, having that as a just an experience to speak to, and the knowledge that you gain from something like that is huge. It's so amazing. So congrats on that. I'm happy that you stuck out for it, that you held out, that you said no to the things because you just knew that that was where you
Yeah.
wanted to be.
It was tough.
I
It was a
bet.
tough road because there were definitely like several times um, where I had the opportunity to stay at a place because I did a lot of contracting roles last year,
Hmm.
actually, where I knew I wanted to be in the design system space. They didn't have like maybe the headcount for a full time position, but it was a contract position. And so I took the contract, got to the end. They enjoyed me, but they wanted me to move out of systems. And so I
Yeah.
was like, no, I can't.
No.
Like, I know it's like crazy to say, like, I'm going to turn down this full time opportunity to go take another contract and like leave that security behind. But like you said, I knew where I wanted to be.
Hmm.
Um, and I wasn't willing to settle. And so if I would have settled, I wouldn't be at LinkedIn right now. I'd be somewhere else doing something other than design systems. Um,
Probably wouldn't be
so
very happy.
I know I wouldn't be because I worked I worked somewhere where they actually deprioritized the system, like the systems team. They kept the design system, but like made it decentralized.
Oh,
And so I had to move into a regular like product design role, and I was like, no, this is not for me. Um, I thought I could stick it out, um, but no.
no, that's awesome. And I think that's super important for people to hear too, is in the beginning of your career, it's okay to dabble and try different things because you need to see what you like and you don't
Mhm.
like. But when you do find one that you feel like really good in and feels like actually drives you to want to learn more and be a valuable employee and do, above and beyond once in a while and really work for um not like a paycheck, but for the company and to just you're there because you believe in it, not just because it's work. Those kinds of things are what help you see the right paths in life. And or at least to try, and that's not saying
Yeah.
that you can't change, right? You might decide one day that you want to do something else because you
Hmm.
have tapped out or maxed out on the design systems. And that's totally okay. But it's good to pay attention to those flags of um or like that gut feeling. I guess
Yeah.
that's kind of how I describe it, of like your brain is telling you you can't give up on this thing yet.
Hmm.
And usually those are the good signs that are telling you that's the path that you need to take.
Um, yeah, I always equate it to the medical field of when you become a doctor, you always start out as like a general
Mm-hmm.
practice type of doctor, and then you explore all of the different specialties,
Yep.
and then you get to work in them for a little bit, you get to experience them, and then you get to pick the one that lights you up. And
Yep.
so I think that so many designers try to specialize right out the gate, and I'm
Yeah.
like, no, like just take a step. Like if you know what you want to do, by all means, like go for it. If
Mm-hmm.
you are the lucky one who knows, but I didn't know what design systems were when I started in UX and
Yeah.
product design. So there's no way that I could have picked that because I didn't know it was a possibility. Um, and so yeah, I always try to push people to just like try it, just try it. You might like it, you might not, but you can't say that you didn't have that experience because you never know what's gonna light that fire in you.
Yep. Exactly. Be okay with dabbling. And to be honest, like I still like to try new things because I'm like, well, what if that's it? I haven't
Mhm.
felt like, yep, this is the one path. I feel like I'm on the way, but I haven't like had that like moment where you're like design systems. This is where I'm good. This is what I'm good at. This is what I
Mhm.
can do. This is the value I bring to the world. Um, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
and I felt the same way about like mentorship, and so it's okay to have multiple things
Hmm.
that like really light you up and like
For sure.
pursue those. So I think a lot of people also get stuck on like, oh, like I found the one thing, like this is the only thing that I could
No.
ever be passionate about.
No.
Not the case at all.
No. Well, like you don't necessarily only have one hobby, right? I mean, some
Mhm.
people, but for the most part, most people have multiple hobbies or like, and really that's no different. It's just that you're not doing that for a career, right? But it's
Yeah,
something that you are passionate about, that brings you joy. And so it's okay to have multiple career things that bring you joy as well. We forget that sometimes.
yeah, and it's really strange because I'm like we were talking about, I'm very passionate about education, just not traditional education,
Exactly.
because that didn't
Yes,
work for me. And so I
exactly.
really want to be able to show other people who may not have degrees or certifications or anything like that that there is still a path,
Hmm.
and it is still possible, and like you can still learn. And just because you don't have this like piece of paper that backs you up doesn't mean that you're not smart and that you're not educated and that you can't do the job.
Yep, 100%. I am actually really excited that not about COVID, but I'm excited that COVID is kind of breaking like the
Hmm.
college system, not to the extent like obviously college should exist for some things, but I also believe very highly that there's this stigma that you need a college degree to do a job, or you need that like piece of paper. But instead, companies are now asking the right questions when they interview people. They're willing to take people based on experience. They're willing to, look beyond like you have a bachelor's degree. And so I think we're going to continue to see those changes come through the gate of like someone like you who has knowledge can educate someone, give them some experience, and they can go start their careers right out the gate, not in debt up to their eyeballs, not, having to spend 4 years
Mm-hmm.
trying to learn a thing. They can just already be doing it and getting experience, because apprentice based work is like
Yes.
an old concept, right? Of like, yes, we get it that, being an electrician, you got to do that, or those kinds of things. But a lot of these careers now have just the same kind of concept. It works. There's no reason for someone to sit in a classroom learning outdated concepts when they could be sitting next to an expert in the field learning on the job and getting paid to do that instead of paying someone else to teach them who probably hasn't even ever done that job. So it's just really fascinating to me. And I'm excited to see that the little shifts that are happening in the education sector, that there is some hope, at least, that, the future generations will have better education opportunities than we did. At least I hope so.
Yeah. And I was going to say the same thing about apprenticeships. Like, I really hope that the upward trend we're seeing of more and more apprenticeships popping up keeps happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that, like, whenever I was first getting started, even in graphic design, like one of the main responses to not having a degree was that I have real world experience. Like, you want somebody with a bachelor's degree who's going to be the same age as me, but have a piece of paper and no real actual work experience.
Yeah.
They've been prompted to do all of their assignments over the last 4 years, where I've been working with clients. I've had to pivot. I've had to like deal with those conflicts and learn how to communicate and learn some of that business language. So which one is kind of more valuable to you at that point?
Exactly.
Do you want somebody who you have to teach all of these things to, or somebody who's kind of like trial by fire themselves into it?
Yes. And if we're being honest, which is more difficult to teach, the soft skills or the hard skills?
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer to me. So it's actually, there's actual reports out now that show that those soft skills are going to be some of the most sought after for the like, I think it's in 5 years from now, when it comes to job hunts and hiring. And I don't know if it's our faults as like people who know better, but I feel like it's the college's faults for not paying attention to that and like quickly implementing some solutions to say, okay, we need to get these types of education opportunities in our programs, because otherwise we're doing a disservice to all these people that we're telling we're going to get them a job in the next 4 to 5 years, and we don't cover any of these skill sets at all. It just blows my mind. So I'm hoping that they're paying attention to that. I know at least the people who are in the new education sector, the online education, the boot camps, the workshops, I think those people are at least paying attention or able to pivot.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be so sought after because of what's happening because of COVID. Like, we had to open up the world. You have to be on a screen and be able to clearly communicate with somebody who's on the other side of the country or the other side of the world. And like, communication is going to be a lot more important, because you're not going to be able to see the subtle gestures that you get to see in like an actual office space. You're not going to be able to go and talk to that person at the drop of a dime whenever you need to clarify something. Like, you've got to be able to articulate yourself from this setting, like
Right.
how we're talking now.
Right.
And
Exactly.
if you don't have the skills to be able to do that, to be able to have, positive interactions with people who aren't right next to you, that's gonna hurt a lot of people
It
who have been
is.
kind of stuck in the ways of the world before. And I think that's why there are a lot of companies who are conflicted about this like back to
Hmm.
office procedure
Yeah.
that we're starting to see a lot of, is because they don't know how to break away from that.
Yeah. And they realized too that with the great resignation, there's a risk involved now, a very expensive risk involved in making the wrong choices, um,
Yeah.
because there's so many less ties that like people are just
People have options now.
they
I
do.
know. I know. As bad as COVID was, it was good for me because I would have had to move to California or to New
Yep.
York or somewhere where LinkedIn had an office to be able to take this
Exactly.
opportunity.
Yeah.
And with that
100%.
comes higher cost of living,
Yep.
all of like the stress of moving,
Yeah. You have
what's the
family.
right neighborhood, yeah, being further away from family. And so that was something that we were really contemplating doing
Mm-hmm.
before COVID happened.
Yep.
And then
Us
that
too.
happened, remote work happened, and we were like, oh, now people actually are okay with me staying here and working for you in another
Yeah.
state.
Where the cost of living is lower and you've
Yep.
established some roots and you feel grounded and comfortable, and because you have to have, I mean, I guess not everyone, but I, as a mom, stability is my love language. So I don't feel good when I'm working if I don't know my family is okay, right?
Mhm.
And so like having to figure out like, do I need to transfer us to a whole new side of the country just so that I can work and make a living? And what is the school system's going to be like there? Is he going to make friends? Are we going to make friends? Are we going to like it? I don't want to move somewhere I've never even been just to take a job. What if I don't like it? Then what do we
Yeah.
do? There's
Yeah.
so many more options now. It's oh, so much better. Okay, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I try to keep these to an hour just to be respectful of everyone. So, but I do want to cover the work that you're doing with is it technically a business, or did you guys kind of just form a community um, for helping Black designers have a voice in the design space? Because COVID really, not COVID,
Mhm.
just COVID, but all the things in the world that were going on at that time really brought to light how behind
Yeah.
the creative world is when it comes to representation. So tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Yeah. So it's both the community and the business side of it, but it's really, it started out as us just wanting to find other people that looked like us in the
Yeah,
design space,
yeah,
because really for me, until I got to places like LinkedIn. I know when I was at NerdWallet, there was one other Black designer there, but LinkedIn's the first place that I've had um, actually a Black manager. And so like I just wasn't having those experiences
yeah,
before. And my other co-founder, Amber Fields, she was the same way. So we were just looking for other people that looked like us, and she really spearheaded starting the community, and I came on like shortly after. Um, and then we saw this like really interesting space where we were sharing knowledge. We were able to help open doors for other people
yes,
within the community that they didn't know about, to
yeah,
maybe potentially different job opportunities, different like contract, freelance gigs, all types of different stuff.
yeah,
Um, and then we started connecting with businesses. And so, but previous to me working at LinkedIn, we actually did an event with LinkedIn where people from the community got to meet some of the designers that worked there, talk to some of the recruiters that were there, and then get first dibs on like these new batch of positions that they opened up. And so it's really just about us trying to create opportunities and open doors
that's
for
amazing.
other Black designers, because we make up I think the statistic is 3%
Wow. Oh gosh.
of the design industry.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. And it's so hard to get in normal circumstances. I can't even imagine. So having the work that you guys are doing is so important, and I hope that you guys continue to grow and you find other communities like yours that can kind of, again, connect together, right? And
Yeah.
grow and create more opportunities, and again, more open doors, because there is something, it's something we take for granted, of
Mhm.
the ability to make a connection with someone and the opportunities that can bring for yourself or for someone else that you know. um, and if those aren't happening, like if people aren't doing the work to make space for you, that path is so difficult. It's so
It is.
hard. And people get like run down to the point of, I just give up.
Yep.
And we can't have that, because that 3% will never grow then. So people need to continue to make efforts to have conversations, right? Like I just saw, I think, what did you do yesterday? You were having like this huge, you were on a huge panel, weren't you?
Yeah, I spoke at the Diversitech Summit.
That's amazing. So cool. Look at you. You're just like all over the place, making moves. um,
I'm trying. I am trying.
that's
Um,
great.
but yeah, like the biggest thing is that like a lot of America and like the physical world around us was built by us but not for us.
Yeah.
And so the digital world, as we see all of the stuff about the metaverse and
Hmm.
the rise of VR technology and different things, like it's gonna be the same, where it's not gonna be built for us either, unless we're
Right.
in the rooms,
You have
we're
to,
able to speak
exactly.
up and have a voice and
Yep.
show where it's lacking and where it's not going to benefit our communities. And so
Yep.
we can only do that if we're there.
Yep.
Um, and so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more of us in the room to be able to have a voice.
Yep. Um, that's such an interesting point. I haven't thought about, like, I guess we are really on the cusp of a new transition
Mhm.
of where technology is going and the growth that society is going to see. And you're right. It's going to be an entirely new, I don't know, like, not, I guess universe is the wrong word, but it is.
Yeah.
It's a space where people are represented in a certain way. And you're right. Um, there won't be the proper representation unless due diligence is made to make sure that the right people are building it and
Mhm.
making sure that that is fully catering to everyone, not one, right?
Yeah. Because I think like the best company culture is a diverse one because I don't know what even like your lived experiences are unless you're in the room to tell me.
Exactly.
And so we have to have people who don't all come from the same place and feel
Mhm.
the same way and think the same way in a room to challenge each other and
Yeah.
to make sure that we're like pushing these products that we're creating to
That's when
really
innovation happens, right?
exactly
You can't have
exactly.
innovation with the same shit all the time.
Mhm.
It will not grow. It will not change. It will not create new things, because if you think about creativity, it is a repetition of the same things that have always been done throughout history. And you're just taking pieces from one thing and
Mhm.
another and putting them together to create something different. And if the things you're creating aren't involving all of the things that are available, you're going to eventually run out of innovative things to make, right?
Yep.
Creativity will create stagnation. It will, I think that we had this problem with templates, right? In
Yep.
web design, everything looks the same. All the websites look the same because you had too many designers that didn't do innovative thinking. And now we're going to probably have another shift again where business owners are going to say, well, I'm not getting good growth because my website looks just like my competitors and it's not any different. And the only way that that changes is by having the right creative people, having a more diverse approach to the design to bring something different to the table that sets them apart. And you don't have that if you don't have diversity. You're 100% right. And I'm hoping that companies start to embrace that more because they have to, because the money is running out. Like,
Exactly.
it forces them to make those choices so that we can continue to support all of the different efforts, things that you're doing, but also on a bigger scale, and make it happen faster, because 3% is devastating to me that
Yeah.
that's the case. That it's 2022 and it's 3% in
And
the
it's been
creative.
3% for years now. Like
It's
that number has not changed.
That's so bad for the things that just are on billboards, the things that are in magazines, the things
Mhm.
that are on TV in
Yep.
any of the next 5 years. Like, they're all going to be the same, right? Unless this drastically changes. And I think we are, at least I hope, and I can't speak because I'm white, but I hope that we are making some headway. I feel in at least the last year that I'm seeing more of a diversity
Mhm.
represented in the creative fields. People are tired of not being heard, and so they're just speaking more loudly, and I'm so happy that that's happening, that they're no longer staying quiet, and they're making their stamp. So thank you for
Yeah.
the work that you do to make sure that that continues to happen.
We're trying, and like allyship is really essential
Mhm.
because the people who are allies kind of take that stance, like similar to you, of understanding that there are varying levels of privilege in the
Yep.
country, and so
Yep.
how can they use theirs to help somebody else? And
Yep.
that's really what it boils down to, is like understanding that, okay, yes, because of the way that I look, I may have a certain level of privilege,
Mhm.
and that's okay. But am I
How
going to
can I
keep
use
that
that
all to
for good?
myself? Yeah.
Right.
Or can I help somebody else who doesn't
Exactly.
have that get into these rooms and have a voice and like do things that they don't have the opportunity to do?
Exactly. And I hope that we continue to see more and more of that, of people going out of their way to make sure that that happens. Like, yes, we're all busy. Yes, we all have a lot on our plates, but it doesn't take that much time for you to just have a shout out on your LinkedIn
Mhm.
page, or um, if you're a business owner, invite another Black business owner to share at your business or something. Or, like, do a joint event, or anything that you could
Take
do.
take a few extra minutes and go somewhere other than Amazon to purchase something.
Exactly.
Just purchase from a small business.
Yep.
Take 15 minutes out of your day to go talk to somebody who's new to the field and just need some advice.
Exactly.
Like it's not really that difficult. Like
It's not.
me as a very busy person, like I do way more than I should. Anytime somebody reaches out, I do the best that I can to make
Hmm.
time for them. Whether
Yeah.
that's I've gotten up at and had like 6 a.m. coffee chats with people because they were in another country and that was like the best time that worked for them. And so it's like
You're such a good
that's
person.
it's but it's not that hard.
It's
Like
really not.
if I'm looking rough, I can just have my camera off. Like the information's gonna be the same,
Right.
but
Right.
that's what I would have wanted somebody to do for me.
Yeah. And really, we put too much pressure on ourselves, like, oh, I got to be professional. I got to look good. I got to speak well. I haven't even had coffee yet. But honestly, people just need a little bit of help. You're right. You're so right. Oh, that's
And
such a good
and
point.
it sits so much better when you just talk regular and you talk real. Like
Yeah.
this is literally like what I have on right now is what I would wear to an interview.
Yeah.
It's basically what I wore with my interview at LinkedIn, like just a t-shirt. I think I had like a ball cap on,
Yeah.
and like I don't feel like I need to try to be something that I'm not to fit in, and I
No,
don't feel like I need to try to talk a way that's not me to fit
no.
in, whether that's like
Because you're setting the wrong example
exactly.
of who you are as a person, and they're not hiring you for your clothes or how well you dress. Let's just be fair. I mean, I don't think you should do the interview from like your living room where your kids are screaming and your dog's barking, because then they can't understand and get to know you. Do your best to like try and find a space in your house for 5 minutes that you can have a conversation with someone. I mean, sometimes you can't, though, to be fair. I've I've held many a
Yeah,
meeting and
I've had
just
that
had to
before too.
apologize. I'm like,
Same here.
this is all I've got today, guys. um
You know,
but
but
even they're hiring you for your knowledge and how the value that you bring to the company, and that has nothing to do, to be honest, with where you live or how you dress.
and the other thing about being a person of color in the space is that other people of color are going to be judged based off of me. And
Yeah.
so if I can come in and say I came in with dreadlocks, tattoos, and a t-shirt, and I know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
just because my appearance doesn't, I'm not wearing a suit doesn't
It
mean that
doesn't
I'm not
match.
educated.
Yeah.
I'm not setting that precedence that every other black person that comes after me has to like meet this ultra high bar of
That's an amazing point.
trying to be something that they're not. Like if suits is you, then that's fine. Like I have friends and they love suits. Like
Yep.
they'll wear suits on a regular day. So
Yep.
show up like that. That's fine.
They're like
But
you and
don't,
your shoes back there.
yeah, but don't be something that you're not is like the
Right.
biggest thing.
Right. And you're really not impressing anyone, to be honest. Like it it I've always struggled with that because I was raised like a certain way that you have to be professional, you have to look a certain way to get hired, you have to speak a certain way, and I was never comfortable when I was trying to do that, and it would stop me from having good interviews. And when I was myself, that's when I could actually put all the things that were fictitious aside and focus on what is the value that I bring, because I felt like myself and I felt like my best version of myself because I didn't care. There was less pressure to be
Yeah.
somebody I was not. So,
That was me
very
early
exciting.
in my design career was definitely that all through graphic design and like the first few positions that I had in UX was definitely me doing exactly what you're talking about. And once I kind of realized it and made the change, like the opportunities skyrocketed. Um, and I literally don't think I'd be here today if I wouldn't have made that change.
100%. Because you were focused on the wrong things, right? And when you actually put time and effort into focusing on the right things, that's when people notice. Because those other things they don't really care about either, to be honest.
They
And if
don't,
they
and they
do,
don't want to do it.
you don't want to work for them if that's what they care about, how nice your suit is. You don't.
Exactly.
You don't.
Exactly. Like if you want to know how nice my shoes are, like that's fine because that's me.
Exactly.
But I understand that that's not everybody, and that's okay.
No, it's a conversation piece, and I think you should have things surrounding you when you're interviewing, especially if you're doing remote work, that are about you, and it helps people get to know you, and it's an icebreaker, right? Like I can say, obviously you like shoes.
Yeah.
What are your favorite sneaks? Like, what did you pick up most recently? It's a conversation starter, and I get to know you better as a person. Um, and I think that that's more important, right? Especially as we continue to do these virtual things.
Yeah, that's the thing I tell my mentees is like, yes, like do the case studies in your portfolio really well.
Yeah,
Like have answers for questions and interviews, but also like be you. Like let
be
you
yourself.
come through because
Yeah, they're hiring you.
this isn't a factory. This isn't the medical field where it's very much can you check these boxes? If it's
Right.
yes, you're hired. If it's no, you're not. It is we live in the gray.
Yeah.
And we want to work with people who we actually want to be
Like,
around and who are
exactly.
humans. Like we don't want robots.
Nope.
We want
No,
humans.
we
So
want
show
people
us that you're
we are going
human.
to enjoy spending every day with, having to, problem solve and have hard times and good times. They're hiring you. Yes, they're not hiring a robot. So that's an excellent point. Well, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Jarvis, for joining me again. Again, congratulations on all the efforts. Good luck with everything. I can't wait to see like next year where you're at, because I think it's going to be amazing. And I hope everything goes well with baby, and we'll talk to you again soon. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and we'll just have to make this like a yearly thing. We'll be
For
back
sure.
next year.
Every year. Yeah. And then I don't know if you want to shout out again where people can find you. Please do that.
Best place would be LinkedIn. Just search my name, Jarvis Moore. I have the other stuff, but that's mainly just for like sneakers. So if you want to talk actual design,
For sure.
go to LinkedIn. And also look for Black UX Labs. If you want to see what we're doing on that side, you can go to findblackux.com or look us up on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And we'll talk to you guys next week or in another time on the podcast. I don't know how sporadically we're going to release these. This is our second season, and I'm much more lazy this time and busy. So it's not consistent, but I hope you guys enjoyed it and that you've found some value. And again, reach out if you have questions on anything. We're here to help and make sure that you can find that path and continue, and don't give up, because clearly Jarvis has proven that amazing things happen when you just keep fighting for yourself and finding those paths. So we'll join you guys next time. Have a great weekend. See you later.